You may be telling yourself that you're behind, that you should be further along by now, that if things were really working, they wouldn't feel this messy. But listen gently, what you're calling failure may actually be the moment growth becomes visible, even if it doesn't look graceful yet. Learning rarely announces itself with confidence. It often arrives disguised as confusion, repetition, or starting over. You try something, it doesn't go as planned, and the old voice rushes in to judge. Yet every attempt changed you in ways you haven't measured. There is a quiet difference between standing still and stabilizing, between falling apart and rearranging. When progress is happening internally, the outer world can look slow or uncertain. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something deeper is integrating. If you've been comparing your pace to others, pause. Comparison ignores context. It erases the courage it took you just to be here, the nights you kept going, the habits you softened, the awareness you gained. None of that disappears because the outcome isn't finished. Notice how quickly you call yourself a failure for needing time, as if learning should be instant, as if understanding should come without repetition. But your nervous system learns through safety and patience, not pressure. Each stumble is information, not a verdict. Progress doesn't always feel like forward motion. Sometimes it feels like revisiting the same lesson with a little more kindness, responding differently to the same trigger, recovering faster, choosing not to abandon yourself. These shifts matter more than you realize. There may be frustration in not seeing results yet. That frustration doesn't mean you're off track. It means you care. And caring is part of learning. You wouldn't feel this way if nothing inside you were changing. Discomfort often signals that old patterns are loosening. Instead of asking, "Why am I still here?" try asking, "What am I understanding now that I didn't before?" Awareness is progress. Self-compassion is progress. Even noticing how harsh you've been with yourself is a step toward gentleness. Stay with this moment. Let learning be messy. Let growth be quiet. You are not failing because you're human. You are learning because you're alive, and learning is how progress truly happens. I want to begin by speaking to the quiet belief that may be living inside you right now, the belief that something has gone wrong. This belief often appears softly. It does not always announce itself with panic. Sometimes it shows up as a sigh, a heaviness, or a thought you barely notice that says, "I shouldn't still be here," or "This shouldn't be this hard." I want you to hear this gently. Difficulty does not mean failure. Discomfort does not mean you missed your chance. Confusion does not mean you are broken. These experiences are often the very signs that learning is taking place. Many people think that growth should feel uplifting right away. They imagine clarity, confidence, and visible progress. Yet growth often begins in the opposite way. It begins with uncertainty, with repetition, with the feeling of being undone before being rebuilt. When something new is forming inside you, the old structures must loosen. That loosening can feel unsettling. It can feel like instability, even though it is actually reorganization. The mind interprets this as something going wrong because it prefers familiarity, even when familiarity is uncomfortable. You may have learned to evaluate your life by outcomes, to look for proof that you are doing well. When proof does not appear quickly, the mind fills in the space with judgment. It says you are behind. It says you are not learning fast enough. It says others are doing better. These thoughts are not truth, they are habits. Habits formed from living in a world that values appearance over integration, speed over depth. Learning does not unfold on a schedule the mind can measure. It unfolds according to readiness, according to safety, according to how much your system can receive at once without shutting down. I want you to consider this idea. What if nothing has gone wrong at all? What if this moment you are in is not a setback, but a pause where something essential is being absorbed? Often, before we can move forward, we must slow down enough to understand what we have already lived through. Understanding takes time. Integration takes patience. Without them, we repeat the same patterns, even when we believe we are moving on. You may feel frustrated that you are facing something familiar again, that you are revisiting a lesson you thought you already learned. This does not mean you failed the lesson. It means you are learning it more deeply now. Learning happens in layers. Each time you meet a similar situation, you bring more awareness. You respond a little differently. You notice more. That is progress, even if the outer situation looks the same. The belief that something has gone wrong often comes from comparing where you are to where you think you should be. That should is rarely your own. It is usually inherited from expectations you absorbed long ago. When you live under those expectations, you turn your natural learning process into a test. Tests create fear. Fear blocks understanding. Understanding requires openness. I want you to notice how you speak to yourself when things feel slow or messy. Is your tone patient or is it sharp? Do you offer yourself encouragement or do you immediately point out what is lacking? The way you speak to yourself matters more than the pace of your progress. Harsh inner language creates resistance. Gentle inner language creates movement. Many people believe that self-judgment keeps them motivated, yet judgment often freezes learning. It makes the nervous system tense, alert, and defensive. A defensive system does not absorb lessons easily. Learning flourishes in an atmosphere of safety. Safety is created through acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval of everything that happens. It means acknowledging what is present without declaring it a failure. I often say that we cannot learn when we are busy punishing ourselves. Punishment turns attention away from insight and toward shame. Shame does not teach. It hides. You may feel embarrassment about still struggling. You may think you should be past this by now. Yet learning does not move in straight lines. It spirals. You return to similar points with new eyes. Each return is not regression. It is refinement. I want you to remember how children learn. They fall many times before they walk. No one calls them failures. We understand that falling is part of learning to stand. Yet when it comes to our own emotional or spiritual growth, we forget this kindness. You are learning how to live with greater awareness. That kind of learning takes time. It requires you to notice patterns that once operated unconsciously. Awareness can feel uncomfortable at first because it disrupts automatic behavior. Disruption is not destruction. It is the beginning of change. You may notice that you feel more sensitive now than you used to, more aware of what does not feel right. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is growth. You cannot feel misaligned unless you are becoming more aligned. When awareness increases, tolerance for old patterns decreases. This can create discomfort. The discomfort is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that your standards are changing internally. I want you to consider that learning often feels like not knowing. When you no longer accept old answers, but have not yet found new ones, you are in a learning space. The mind wants certainty. The heart wants truth. Truth arrives gradually. If you rush this process, you may miss what it is trying to teach you. If you judge it, you may resist it. If you allow it, learning settles naturally. You may be tempted to label this moment as wasted time, yet nothing you are experiencing is wasted. Each pause, each question, each moment of discomfort is adding to your understanding, even if you cannot yet articulate how. I want you to know that learning often feels invisible while it is happening. You do not see roots growing underground, yet they are essential for what comes next. The belief that something has gone wrong often comes from fear of being left behind. Yet life does not abandon you because you are learning slowly. Life supports depth as much as speed. You are not late, you are not defective, you are not failing. You are in the middle of understanding something that matters. I want you to notice how quickly you turn uncertainty into self-criticism. That habit can be softened. When you catch yourself thinking, what is wrong with me? Pause and try a different question. Ask, what am I learning right now? That question opens curiosity. Curiosity invites insight. Insight brings clarity in its own time. You may not like being in this in-between space. That is understandable. Yet many transformations happen here. In the spaces where old identities loosen and new ones are not yet fully formed. If you judge this space, you rush through it. If you allow it, you emerge wiser. I want you to trust that your life is not malfunctioning. It is responding to your growth. As you become more aware, life asks you to make different choices. That adjustment period can feel uncomfortable. Adjustment does not mean failure. It means alignment is happening. You may still feel unsure. You may still wish things were clearer. That does not negate the learning taking place. Learning does not always feel good. It feels real. I want you to give yourself permission to be a learner. Learners ask questions. Learners repeat lessons. Learners make mistakes. Learners grow. You are allowed to be in this process without rushing to label it. You are allowed to be imperfect while you learn. Perfection is not the goal. Understanding is. As you release the belief that something has gone wrong, you create space for compassion. Compassion calms the inner world. A calm inner world learns more easily. Nothing about you needs to be fixed in order for learning to happen. Learning is already happening because you are alive and paying attention. I want you to trust this moment more than your judgment of it. Judgment looks backward or outward. Trust stays present. Stay present with yourself now. Notice that you are here, that you are reflecting, that you are willing to listen. That willingness is not failure. It is the beginning of learning becoming conscious. And conscious learning is how real growth begins. I want to speak with you now about learning itself, because many people misunderstand what learning truly is. They think learning should be quick, clear, and complete. They believe that once a lesson is learned, it should never return. Yet life does not teach in this way. Life teaches through living, and living is not a straight path. From the moment you were born, you learn by experience. You learn by trying, by adjusting, by responding. You did not wait until you understood everything before you moved forward. You learned as you went. That natural way of learning has never left you. Learning is not a sign that something is missing. It is a sign that something is alive and growing. Only what is alive can learn. Only what is engaged can change. When you are learning, life is working with you, not against you. Many people carry a belief that learning should end at a certain point, that there should be a moment when everything finally makes sense and no more mistakes are made. This belief creates unnecessary pressure. Life does not stop teaching because you reached a certain age or level of understanding. Learning continues because life continues. Each new experience invites a new response. Each response refines awareness. This is not a flaw in the design of life. It is the design. You may feel discouraged when you realize you are still learning something you thought you already understood. Perhaps you thought you had learned how to set boundaries, or trust yourself, or let go. When the same pattern appears again, the mind quickly labels it as failure. I want you to hear this clearly. Returning to a lesson does not mean you failed to learn it. It means you are learning it at a deeper level now. Depth comes from repetition, not from avoidance. Each time a lesson returns, it brings new information. You notice different feelings. You respond a little differently. You recover more quickly. These are signs that learning is progressing, even if the outer situation looks familiar. Life does not repeat lessons to punish you. It repeats them to give you another opportunity to choose with greater awareness. Awareness is the real gift of learning. I often remind people that experience is the greatest teacher. Books, conversations, and insights are helpful, but wisdom comes from what you live through. Wisdom is understanding that has been embodied. Embodied understanding takes time. The body and heart need repetition to integrate what the mind grasps quickly. That is why learning can feel slow. Integration is happening beneath the surface. You may notice that when you try to rush learning, you become tense. Tension interferes with understanding. When you allow learning to unfold naturally, the body relaxes and insight settles more easily. I want you to consider how you treat yourself when you are learning something new in the outer world. You expect to practice. You expect to make mistakes. You allow time. Yet when it comes to emotional or inner learning, you often deny yourself this patience. You tell yourself you should know better by now. You compare your learning pace to others. You forget that inner learning involves unlearning old patterns as well as learning new ones. Unlearning takes time. Patterns formed over years do not dissolve in moments. They soften gradually as new experiences replace old ones. Learning also requires safety. When you feel safe, you explore. When you feel threatened, you defend. Defensiveness blocks learning. Safety invites curiosity. If you have been judging yourself harshly, your system may be in a state of defense. In that state, learning becomes difficult. This is why kindness is not indulgent. It is necessary. Life teaches best when you feel supported. That support can come from others, but it must also come from you. Self-support creates an inner environment where learning can flourish. You may feel impatient with yourself for needing time, yet time is not your enemy. Time allows lessons to mature. Maturity brings wisdom. I want you to notice how learning feels in your body. Often it feels like uncertainty, like not quite knowing. This feeling can be uncomfortable, but it is not wrong. It is the feeling of something reorganizing inside you. Many people try to escape this feeling by rushing to conclusions or decisions. Yet premature conclusions often lead to repetition because the lesson was not fully integrated. Allow yourself to stay with not knowing a little longer. Not knowing creates openness. Openness allows learning to deepen. Learning is also relational. You learn through interactions, through feedback, through noticing how you feel in certain situations. These experiences are information, not judgments. When something feels uncomfortable, ask yourself what it is showing you rather than what it says about you. This shift changes learning from self-attack to self-discovery. I want you to understand that learning is not linear. You may feel clear one day and confused the next. This does not mean clarity was false. It means learning is still unfolding. Think of learning as a spiral. You return to similar themes, but from a slightly different place each time. Each turn of the spiral brings more understanding. You may not notice the difference immediately, but over time, patterns change. You respond with more awareness. You choose differently. You are kinder to yourself. These changes matter deeply, even if they are quiet. I often say that life is always responding to the thoughts you think and the beliefs you hold. As your understanding grows, your experiences shift to reflect that growth. This reflection can feel challenging before it feels supportive. When old beliefs loosen, there can be a period of instability. The old way no longer fits, and the new way is not yet comfortable. This is a learning space, not a failure space. You may feel vulnerable here. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is openness. Openness allows learning to happen at a deeper level. I want you to stop measuring your learning by how polished it looks. Polished growth is often surface level. Real learning changes how you relate to yourself and others. Ask yourself how you treat yourself now compared to before. Are you a little more patient, a little more aware, a little quicker to notice when something does not feel right? These are signs of learning. Learning does not always produce immediate confidence. Often it produces humility. Humility is not self-doubt. It is openness to continuing growth. You may notice that as you learn, you ask different questions. Instead of why am I like this, you ask, what is this teaching me? That shift alone shows learning has begun. I want you to trust that life knows how to teach you in the way you can receive. It will not give you lessons you are incapable of learning. It will give you what supports your growth. You are not required to learn everything at once. Life unfolds in stages. Each stage prepares you for the next. If you find yourself repeating patterns, do not rush to label yourself. Pause and ask what is being clarified now that was not clear before. Often, learning reveals itself through compassion. You understand others more deeply. You understand yourself more gently. That understanding is wisdom. Wisdom is not knowing all the answers. It is knowing how to meet questions with patience. I want you to see learning as a partnership with life. You show up, life responds. You adjust. Life teaches. This conversation continues as long as you live. Nothing about this process is a mistake. It is how life grows through you. As you begin to understand learning as a natural process rather than a test you are failing, something softens inside, pressure eases. Curiosity returns. Curiosity invites joy back into learning. Joy may be quiet, but it sustains you. You are allowed to be a learner for as long as you live. There is no deadline for understanding. There is no finish line for growth. Learning is not something you do wrong or right. It is something you participate in. And you are participating right now by being willing to reflect, to feel, and to stay present. That willingness is not failure. It is life learning itself through you. I want to speak with you now about comparison, because comparison quietly convinces many people that they are failing when they are actually learning. Comparison does not tell the truth about your life. It tells a story built from partial images, assumptions, and borrowed standards that were never meant to measure your growth. When you compare yourself to others, you are usually comparing your inner experience to their outer appearance. You see their results, not their process. You see where they seem to be, not what they have lived through to get there. This kind of comparison leaves out the most important part of learning context. Your life is unfolded through specific experiences, sensitivities, challenges, and awakenings. No one else has lived your exact path. When you compare yourself to someone else's timeline, you erase your own history. And when you erase your history, you dismiss the learning it contained. Many people believe there is a correct pace for life, a time when things should be figured out, a moment when growth should be complete. These ideas are not truths. They are expectations passed down through culture, family, and fear. Life does not work on a schedule that can be compared or enforced. Life unfolds according to readiness. Readiness includes emotional safety, awareness, and willingness. These qualities cannot be rushed without cost. You may tell yourself that others seem clearer, more settled, or more successful. Yet clarity often looks calm only after confusion has been lived through. Stability often follows many periods of uncertainty. What you see is the surface of someone else's learning, not the depth. I want you to notice how comparison feels in your body. Often it feels like contraction, like tightening, like a sinking feeling that tells you that you are somehow less. This sensation is not guidance. It is the body responding to pressure. Pressure does not support learning. It interrupts it. When you live according to false timelines, you begin to hurry yourself through experiences that are meant to be integrated slowly. You skip over feelings. You override intuition. You push for answers before understanding has settled. This is not because you lack discipline. It is because you believe you are late, and believing you are late creates anxiety. Anxiety clouds perception. And I want you to hear this clearly. You cannot be late for your own life. You cannot miss what is unfolding through you. You are present for every step you are meant to take. False timelines often come from comparing your inner learning to outer milestones, yet inner growth does not always produce visible markers. Sometimes it produces softer reactions, clearer boundaries, or quicker recovery. These changes are real, even if they are not obvious to others. You may feel discouraged because your growth does not look impressive. That discouragement comes from measuring your life with the wrong tools. Depth cannot be measured with surface standards. I want you to consider that learning is not a race. There is no prize for finishing first. There is only understanding that comes from living honestly. When you stop comparing yourself, you reclaim energy. That energy returns to the present moment where learning is actually happening. Comparison pulls you outward, presence brings you home. You may notice that when you release comparison, you feel grief. Grief for time you believe you lost. Grief for choices you think delayed you. Allow that grief. It arises when old expectations dissolve. Grief does not mean something was wasted. It means you cared. And caring is part of learning. You may also notice relief when you stop measuring yourself. Relief comes from no longer fighting an invisible clock. That relief creates space for clarity. I want you to trust that your pace is not wrong. Your pace reflects the depth of what you are integrating. Some lessons require slowness because they touch the heart, not just the mind. You may have learned that worth is proven through speed or achievement. That belief can make learning feel like a performance. Yet learning is not something you demonstrate. It is something you live. False timelines often create the illusion that others have arrived while you are still becoming. In truth, everyone is becoming. Arrival is temporary, learning continues. And I want you to notice how often you think, I should be past this by now. That thought turns learning into a judgment. Replace it gently with, I am understanding this more deeply now. Depth brings stability. Stability lasts longer than quick change. You may still feel impatient at times. Impatience does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you care about your life. Meet impatience with kindness rather than pressure. Kindness allows impatience to soften. Pressure hardens it. When you release false timelines, you give yourself permission to learn at the pace your system requires. That permission is a form of self-respect. I often say that life unfolds perfectly for those who are willing to trust it. Trust does not mean passivity. It means cooperating with your own rhythm instead of fighting it. You may notice that when you trust your pace, decisions feel less frantic. You are no longer rushing to catch up. You begin to listen more carefully. Listening reveals the next step when it is ready. Forcing steps before readiness often leads to repetition. Trusting timing allows learning to integrate fully. You may still see others moving quickly. Let them. Their pace is not yours to manage. Your responsibility is to honor your own learning. Comparison distracts you from the wisdom you are gaining. When you stop comparing, you can hear your inner guidance more clearly. I want you to imagine releasing the idea that there is a correct timeline for your life. Imagine allowing your life to unfold according to understanding rather than expectation. Notice how your body responds to that idea. Often there is a sense of relief. Relief tells you something true is being acknowledged. You are not meant to live someone else's life. You are meant to live yours fully. Fully includes learning, repetition, and time. Time is not punishing you. Time is allowing integration. Integration is what makes learning lasting. When you stop comparing, you stop abandoning yourself. You stay with your experience instead of judging it. Staying is how learning deepens. I want you to know that you are not behind. You are exactly where your learning has brought you. That place deserves respect. As you let go of comparison and false timelines, you create space for patience. Patience is not waiting without movement. It is allowing movement to happen naturally. natural movement feels aligned. It does not exhaust you. You may still have goals. Goals are not the problem. The problem is using goals to measure worth. Worth is not earned through speed. You are worthy while learning. You are worthy while unsure. You are worthy while growing. I want you to trust that life is not keeping score against you. Life is responding to you. As you release pressure, life feels more supportive. You do not need to catch up. You need to arrive where you are. Arrival happens when you stop comparing and start honoring your own rhythm. That rhythm has guided you this far, and it will continue to guide you gently, faithfully, and in perfect timing for you. I want to speak with you now about setbacks, because setbacks are often where learning is misunderstood most deeply. When something does not go as planned, the mind rushes to interpret it. It asks what went wrong, who is at fault, and what this says about you. Very quickly, learning is replaced by judgment. Judgment feels decisive, but it is not wise. It closes the heart just when openness is needed most. When you meet a setback with judgment, you turn away from the very information that experience is offering you. A setback does not mean you fail to learn. It means learning is still in progress. Life rarely teaches everything at once. It teaches in stages, and each stage invites refinement. I want you to notice how quickly you may turn inward with criticism when something feels disappointing. The inner voice may say you should have known better, that you should be further along, that you somehow ruined your progress. This voice learned to motivate through fear, not through love. Fear may push you to act, but it does not help you understand. Understanding grows when you feel safe enough to look honestly at what happened. Setbacks are information. They show you where old habits still operate. They show you where fear still influences choices. They show you where compassion is still needed. None of this is evidence of failure. It is evidence of awareness expanding. When you respond to a setback with kindness, you create space to learn from it. Kindness asks, "What can I see now?" Judgment asks, "What is wrong with me?" One opens the door, the other slams it shut. I want you to consider how you would treat a child who was learning something new and stumbled. You would not shame them, you would reassure them, you would encourage them to try again. That same patience belongs to you. Many people believe that being kind to themselves after a setback will make them complacent. Yet kindness does not remove responsibility, it removes cruelty. Cruelty never helped anyone learn. When you meet yourself with kindness, your nervous system relaxes. A relaxed system can reflect, adjust, and integrate. A tense system repeats patterns because it is in survival mode. I often remind people that learning requires safety. When you feel unsafe inside, you protect yourself by defending old behaviors, even when they no longer serve you. Safety allows flexibility. A setback may feel like going backward. In truth, it often means you are noticing more. You see patterns sooner. You feel discomfort earlier. This awareness can feel frustrating, yet it is a sign of growth. You may also notice that you recover more quickly than before. Even if the setback looks similar on the outside, your inner response may be different. You may blame yourself less. You may return to balance sooner. These are important changes. I want you to stop measuring setbacks by how much they disrupt you and start noticing how you meet them. The way you respond matters more than the event itself. Meeting a setback with kindness does not mean pretending it did not matter. It means acknowledging what happened without attacking yourself. It means allowing emotion without letting it turn into shame. Shame keeps you stuck. Compassion moves you forward. You may feel disappointed with yourself when something does not work out. Disappointment is a natural feeling. It does not need to be layered with judgment. Feelings pass more easily when they are not burdened with stories. I want you to notice the difference between saying, "I am disappointed," and saying, "I am a disappointment. One is a feeling, the other is a verdict. Feelings teach, verdicts end conversation. Learning continues when conversation remains open. Setbacks often appear when you are trying something new. New behavior feels unfamiliar. The old pattern may resurface briefly, not because you failed, but because it is still being replaced. Replacement happens gradually. Each time you notice and respond differently, even slightly, you weaken the old pattern. This is learning in action. I want you to recognize that setbacks are part of learning's rhythm. Expansion often happens, followed by contraction, followed by deeper integration. This rhythm is natural. Fighting it creates exhaustion. When you judge yourself for setbacks, you add unnecessary suffering. Suffering does not accelerate learning. It delays it. Kindness allows you to ask better questions. Instead of asking why you are like this, you ask what this moment is showing you. That question invites insight. Insight may come slowly. That is all right. There is no rush. The lesson will stay available until it is understood. I want you to consider how often you learn something meaningful through difficulty. Ease rarely forces reflection. Difficulty invites awareness. Awareness leads to growth. This does not mean you should seek difficulty. It means that when difficulty appears, it can be met with curiosity instead of condemnation. You may feel tempted to give up after a setback. Giving up often comes from believing the setback defines you. It does not. It describes a moment, not your worth. You are not required to be flawless to be learning. Learning includes missteps. It includes correction. It includes patience. I often say that when you make a mistake and punish yourself, you learn fear. When you make a mistake and forgive yourself, you learn wisdom. Wisdom is not avoiding mistakes. Wisdom is knowing how to respond to them. You may notice that kindness feels unfamiliar when you are disappointed. That is because judgment was learned earlier. Kindness can be learned now through repetition. Each time you meet a setback with kindness, you teach your inner world that learning is safe. Safety allows honesty. Honesty reveals truth. Truth may show you something you need to adjust. Adjustment does not require shame. It requires clarity. I want you to remember that setbacks do not erase progress. They reveal where progress is still integrating. Integration takes time. You may still feel frustration. Frustration means you care. Caring is not a flaw. It is part of learning. Meet frustration gently. Do not turn it into a weapon against yourself. You are allowed to rest after a setback. Rest allows the nervous system to settle. Settled systems learn more effectively. You may notice that when you stop criticizing yourself, solutions appear more easily. This is not coincidence. Creativity emerges when fear subsides. I want you to trust that your life is not testing you to see if you fail. Life is teaching you how to respond with awareness and love. Each setback invites you to practice kindness. Each practice of kindness strengthens learning. You may not get it right every time. That is not required. What matters is that you return to compassion more often than you return to judgment. Learning is not about never stumbling. It is about how you stand back up. Stand up with gentleness. Stand up with understanding. Stand up knowing that nothing about this moment disqualifies you from growth. As you meet setbacks with kindness instead of judgment, learning becomes less painful and more meaningful. You stop fighting yourself and start cooperating with life. And cooperation is how learning truly takes root. I want to speak with you now about growth that does not announce itself. Growth that does not arrive with celebration or certainty. Growth that lives quietly beneath the surface, often unnoticed because it does not match the old ideas of what progress is supposed to look like. Many people believe growth must be dramatic to be real. They look for big shifts, final answers, or visible success. Yet much of the most meaningful learning happens in small, almost invisible ways. If you are not looking for these signs, you may overlook how much has already changed. Growth often shows itself not in what no longer happens, but in how you respond when it does. You may still encounter familiar challenges, but something inside you reacts differently. You pause sooner. You soften more quickly. You recover faster. These changes matter deeply. I want you to notice how long it takes you now to return to yourself after something difficult happens. Perhaps you once stayed in self-blame for days, and now it lasts hours. Perhaps it once lasted hours, and now it passes in moments. This is growth, even if the challenge itself looks the same. Learning reshapes your inner response before it reshapes your outer circumstances. The inner shift comes first. The outer world follows later, in its own time. You may find that you speak to yourself more gently than you once did. Even if harsh thoughts still appear, you do not believe them as fully. You notice them, you question them. That awareness is not small. It is the result of learning. You may also notice that you recognize your limits more quickly. You stop before exhaustion deepens. You say no sooner. You listen when something feels wrong. These are signs that you are learning to honor yourself. Honor is not loud. It is quiet consistency. I want you to pay attention to moments when you choose not to abandon yourself. Perhaps you rest instead of pushing. Perhaps you tell the truth instead of staying silent. Perhaps you forgive yourself instead of punishing. These moments are evidence of growth. Growth is often measured by the absence of self-violence. Less harshness, less urgency, less pressure. These absences create space for peace. You may still experience doubt. Doubt does not mean growth has stopped. Doubt often appears when old beliefs loosen and new understanding has not yet fully settled. This is a learning space. In this space, your task is not to judge your progress, but to notice your awareness. Awareness is the seed of all change. I want you to reflect on how you now notice patterns that once went unseen. You may catch yourself sooner in old habits. You may recognize when fear is driving a choice. Recognition does not always prevent repetition immediately, but it changes the outcome over time. Each time you recognize a pattern without shaming yourself, you weaken it. Shame strengthens patterns. Awareness dissolves them. You may feel disappointed that you are still learning what you thought you had mastered. That disappointment comes from an expectation that learning should be finished. Learning is not something you complete. It is something you deepen. Deepening brings stability, not perfection. I want you to notice how you now relate to your emotions. Perhaps you allow them more space. Perhaps you listen instead of suppressing. Perhaps you no longer demand that they disappear quickly. This change reflects learning. Emotional maturity is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of compassion. You may also notice that you are more discerning about what you give your energy to. You choose rest more often. You step away sooner from what drains you. These choices are forms of wisdom. Wisdom grows quietly. It does not need approval to be real. I want you to consider how you once reacted to discomfort compared to now. Perhaps you once rushed to fix it. Perhaps you now allow it to speak. Allowing discomfort without panic is a sign of growth. Learning teaches you that discomfort is not always danger. Sometimes it is information. You may notice that you now ask different questions. Instead of asking why something keeps happening, you ask what it is teaching you. This shift in questioning shows that learning has changed your relationship with experience. Questions guide attention. When your questions soften, your experience softens too. I want you to notice if you are more patient with others than you once were. Often, as we learn to treat ourselves with compassion, we extend that compassion outward. This is not weakness. It is integration. Integration means what you learn inwardly begins to shape how you live outwardly. You may find that you no longer rush to judge others' paths. As comparison softens within you, understanding grows. Understanding is a sign that learning is settling deeply. Growth also shows up as discernment. You notice what no longer fits. You feel less obligation to continue what drains you. Letting go is a form of learning. You may feel sadness as you release old identities or roles. That sadness does not mean growth is wrong. It means you are honoring what once mattered. Honoring the past allows you to move forward without resentment. I want you to recognize that learning often looks like simplification. You do not need as many explanations. You trust your feelings more. You act with less noise inside. Simplicity is a sign of alignment. You may still have moments when you question whether you are making progress. In those moments, look for subtlety. Look for how you treat yourself when you make a mistake. Look for how quickly you return to balance. Returning is growth. I often remind people that learning does not remove challenges. It changes your capacity to meet them. Capacity grows through experience, not avoidance. You may notice that you no longer feel as threatened by uncertainty. You still prefer clarity, but you can tolerate not knowing. Tolerance of uncertainty is wisdom. Wisdom does not eliminate questions. It holds them gently. And I want you to see that growth often feels quiet because it is becoming part of who you are. When something is integrated, it no longer stands out. It simply functions. You do not celebrate breathing each day, yet breathing sustains you. In the same way, learning sustains you quietly. You may notice that you now recover your sense of self more quickly after being challenged. You no longer lose yourself for as long. This is a powerful sign of growth. Growth is not measured by how often you fall. It is measured by how you rise. You may also notice that you feel less need to explain your journey to others. Explanation often comes from insecurity. Self-trust reduces the need to justify. I want you to acknowledge these shifts, even if they feel small. Small shifts change the direction of your life over time. You do not need to wait for a big breakthrough to validate your learning. The fact that you are more aware, more gentle, and more present is evidence enough. Learning does not always feel exciting. Often it feels like settling into yourself, settling into truth, settling into acceptance. That settling is profound. You may find that you are kinder to yourself on days when nothing seems to be working. Kindness on difficult days is one of the clearest signs of growth. I want you to trust that even when you feel uncertain, learning is happening. Awareness does not disappear because confidence wavers. Confidence grows after learning integrates. Integration takes time. You are not failing because growth feels quiet. Quiet growth is often the kind that lasts. Look at who you are now compared to who you were before you began paying attention. Even if the difference feels subtle, it is real. You are learning how to live with yourself more honestly. You are learning how to respond with care. You are learning how to listen. These lessons shape everything. Growth does not need your approval to continue. It only needs your willingness to notice. Notice how you are gentler. Notice how you recover. Notice how you stay. These are not accidents. They are the signs of learning becoming part of you. And that kind of growth cannot be taken away. I want to speak with you now about wisdom, because wisdom is what slowly emerges when learning has been lived, not just understood. Wisdom is not loud. It does not insist on being recognized. It shows itself quietly in the way you respond, the way you choose, and the way you care for yourself when things are uncertain. Many people doubt their wisdom because it did not arrive in a single moment of clarity. They expect wisdom to feel confident and complete. Yet wisdom grows through experience, and experience is often messy, emotional, and unfinished. You gain wisdom every time you live through something and reflect instead of shutting down. You gain wisdom when you notice how something affects you. You gain wisdom when you adjust, even slightly, based on what you have felt I want you to understand that wisdom is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of understanding within struggle. It is knowing how to meet yourself when things are difficult. You may look back at your experiences and wish they had been easier. That is natural. Yet those experiences shaped your awareness. They taught you what matters to you. They taught you what you will no longer tolerate. They taught you where you need to be kinder with yourself. These teachings are wisdom. Wisdom does not always give you immediate answers. Sometimes it gives you restraint. It tells you to pause instead of rushing. It tells you to listen instead of reacting. It tells you to wait until something feels right. Waiting is often misunderstood as weakness, yet waiting guided by awareness is strength. It is trusting that you do not need to force life. You may notice that you now sense things earlier than you once did. You feel misalignment sooner. You recognize discomfort before it grows. This sensitivity is wisdom at work. Sensitivity is not something to overcome. It is something to respect. Respecting sensitivity allows it to guide you gently instead of overwhelming you. I want you to notice how your experiences have changed the way you see yourself. You may be less harsh, less idealistic, more realistic. Realism rooted in compassion is wisdom. You may also notice that you no longer seek certainty the way you once did. You are more comfortable with not knowing. This comfort does not come from indifference. It comes from trust. Trust in yourself grows when you see that you can survive uncertainty, that you can adjust, that you can learn. This trust is built through experience, not theory. You may still question yourself at times. Questioning does not erase wisdom. Questioning often means you are considering things carefully instead of acting automatically. Automatic behavior comes from habit. Considered behavior comes from awareness. Wisdom shows itself when you choose awareness over impulse, when you choose kindness over criticism, when you choose truth over comfort. These choices may not always be easy, yet they feel aligned. Alignment brings peace, even when the path is challenging. I often remind people that wisdom is not about being right, it is about being honest. Honesty allows you to learn from what is happening instead of defending against it. When you trust the wisdom gained through experience, you stop dismissing your own knowing. You stop telling yourself that you should know less than others. You stop handing your authority away. Authority does not mean control. It means inner agreement. You trust your perceptions. You trust your feelings. You trust that what you have lived has value. You may notice that you are less easily swayed by outside opinions. You listen, but you do not abandon yourself. This balance is wisdom. Wisdom allows you to receive guidance without losing your center. It allows you to consider new ideas without erasing what you already know. I want you to consider how often you once ignored your own experience because it did not match what you were told. Now, you are learning to include your experience as valid information. This inclusion strengthens self-trust. You may still feel moments of fear when you rely on your own understanding. Fear often appears when you stop outsourcing your authority. Fear does not mean you are wrong. It means you are growing. Growth requires courage. Courage does not eliminate fear. It moves forward with care. Wisdom also shows up as compassion for others. When you understand how much learning takes, you judge less quickly. You see struggle differently. This does not make you passive. It makes you humane. Humane wisdom recognizes that everyone is learning something, even when it does not look graceful. I want you to honor the wisdom you have gained, even if it came through difficulty. Difficulty does not cancel learning. Often, it deepens it. You may wish you had learned certain things sooner. That wish is understandable, yet learning arrives when you are ready to integrate it. Earlier understanding without readiness does not last. What you have learned now has roots. It is grounded in experience. That grounding makes it reliable. Wisdom also means knowing when to stop pushing yourself. knowing when rest is needed, knowing when to speak and when to wait. These discernments come only through lived experience. You may notice that you trust yourself more now, even if quietly. You may not announce it, but you feel it. That feeling is wisdom becoming embodied. Embodied wisdom feels calm. It does not rush. It does not argue. It simply knows when something is not aligned. You may still make mistakes. Wisdom does not prevent mistakes. It changes how you respond to them. You learn more quickly. You forgive yourself more readily. You adjust without collapse. This resilience is wisdom. I want you to see that nothing you have lived through was meaningless. Each experience added to your understanding. Each moment taught you something about yourself or life. Even experiences you would not choose again contributed to your awareness. Awareness is the foundation of wisdom. When you trust the wisdom gained through experience, you stop treating your past as something to overcome. You begin to treat it as something that informed you. This shift brings peace. You may feel gratitude for what you have learned, even if you still feel tenderness around how you learned it. Gratitude does not erase pain. It honors growth. I want you to carry this understanding with you. You are wiser now because you lived, not because you avoided. Wisdom is the quiet companion that stays with you as you continue learning. It does not demand perfection. It supports discernment. As you trust your wisdom more, you rely less on judgment. You move with more confidence, even when uncertain. You trust your ability to respond. This trust is earned through experience, and you have earned it. You may not always recognize your wisdom immediately. That is all right. Wisdom reveals itself over time. Listen to how you speak to yourself now. Listen to how you pause. Listen to how you choose. These are the places wisdom lives. And as you continue, wisdom will continue to guide you, not loudly, but faithfully. You have learned, you are learning, and you are wiser than you give yourself credit for. I want to speak with you now about living gently, because gentleness is what allows learning to continue without turning into self-judgment. Many people believe that once they understand they are learning, they must now push themselves to do better. Yet the deepest growth comes not from pressure, but from kindness carried into daily life. Living gently does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop punishing yourself for being human. It means you allow learning to unfold without demanding that it hurry or prove itself. When you live gently, you no longer wake up asking what you must fix today. You begin asking how you can meet yourself today. That question changes the tone of your life. Tone shapes experience more than circumstance ever could. You may notice that when you stop forcing yourself, you actually learn more. Your mind becomes clearer. Your body relaxes. Your intuition speaks more softly but more honestly. Gentleness makes room for awareness. Learning continues throughout life. There is no moment when you graduate from being a learner. Yet when you accept this, learning becomes lighter. You stop turning every challenge into a verdict on your worth. I want you to consider how much energy you once spent trying to prove that you were doing life correctly. That effort was exhausting. Living gently allows you to redirect that energy toward presence. Presence is where learning becomes wisdom. Living gently also means allowing yourself to move at a pace that honors your nervous system. Some lessons require stillness, some require action. Gentleness helps you sense the difference. You may notice that you no longer rush to label experiences as good or bad. You allow them to be informative. Information guides. Judgment restricts. When you live this way, setbacks lose their power to define you. They become moments of recalibration rather than reasons for shame. I often remind people that learning does not require suffering. Suffering often comes from resisting the process. Acceptance softens resistance and allows learning to integrate naturally. Living gently means you stop using pain as motivation. You no longer need to scare yourself into change. You trust that understanding will guide you forward. This trust creates steadiness, Steadiness allows you to stay present even when things feel uncertain. You may still feel fear from time to time. Fear is part of being alive. Living gently means you do not attack yourself for feeling afraid. You listen to what fear is trying to protect. Listening transforms fear into guidance. You may also notice that you are kinder to others as you live gently. When you stop judging yourself harshly, judgment toward others softens too. Compassion grows naturally. Compassion does not make you passive, it makes you perceptive. You see clearly without needing to condemn. Living gently allows learning to become part of your way of being rather than something you must constantly work on. Learning becomes integrated. You respond with wisdom rather than reaction. You may notice that you begin to trust life more, not because life is always easy, but because you trust yourself to respond with care. This trust is what allows peace to exist alongside growth. I want you to understand that you do not need to earn rest by learning everything perfectly. Rest is part of learning. Integration happens during rest. Living gently means allowing cycles. Effort followed by rest. Insight followed by stillness. Movement followed by reflection. These cycles support growth. You may still feel moments of impatience with yourself. When that happens, meet impatience gently too. Impatience often arises when something meaningful is changing. Gentleness does not remove challenge. It changes how challenge is held. When you live gently, you no longer ask, when will I finally be done learning? You begin to appreciate learning as a sign of life moving through you. Learning means you are engaged. It means you are responsive. It means you are alive. You may notice that as you live gently, your sense of worth stabilizes. Worth no longer depends on progress or performance. Worth becomes something you carry with you. This stability allows you to take risks without self-punishment. You try, you adjust, you learn. I want you to know that living gently does not make learning slower. It makes it deeper. Deep learning changes patterns at the root. Roots grow quietly. You do not see them forming, yet they support everything above them. Living gently also means allowing joy without suspicion. When joy appears, you receive it. You do not wait for it to be taken away. You trust the moment. Trusting the moment is a sign of learning integrated. You may notice that your inner dialogue feels kinder now. This kindness did not appear because you forced it. It appeared because you practiced compassion through learning. I want you to remember that the goal was never to stop learning. The goal was to stop hurting yourself while learning. You are allowed to learn slowly. You are allowed to revisit lessons. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to be human. Living gently means you stop turning your life into a test. You begin experiencing it as a conversation with life. Life responds to how you treat yourself. When you treat yourself gently, life feels less threatening. You may still encounter difficulty. Difficulty does not disappear, yet it no longer defines you. It becomes part of the landscape rather than the whole story. I want you to acknowledge how far you have come, not by looking at outcomes, but by noticing how you hold yourself now. Do you pause more? Do you listen more? Do you forgive more quickly? These are the marks of learning lived gently. You are no longer trying to become worthy through learning. You are learning because you already are worthy. That shift changes everything. You are not failing. You are not falling behind. You are learning, and learning is life expressing itself through you. As you continue forward, let gentleness be your companion. Let curiosity guide you. Let compassion steady you. You do not need to arrive anywhere to be complete. You are complete while learning, and living gently is how you honor that truth every day.